the National Assembly abolished the feudal system of taxes, tithes, and the special privileges that were enjoyed by the clergy and nobles by birth. In doing this, over 2 million livres were recovered. The prices of bread dropped, and the people of France were happy again. Man is born free, yet everywhere he is in chains now, said Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Today, we all take liberty and freedom of expression for granted. This was not the case in the 18th century France, where the people had to fight for freedom from the years of oppression under the feudal lords. So, the recognition of the National Assembly by King Louis and him agreeing to their demands was a victory for the entire Third Estate. With the abolition of special privileges, tithes, and feudal taxes, people were happier as a huge burden had been lifted off them. The next thing on the agenda of the National Assembly was the creation of a constitution. They completed this in 1791. As per the new constitution, France became a constitutional monarchy with the king, or the executive, having to share power with the legislature and the judiciary. King Louis, however, continued to retain the executive powers. Not everyone could vote as per the new constitution. Only men who were older than 25 years and who paid taxes were allowed to vote. This did not go well with people like Jean-Paul Marat, who criticized it vehemently in his paper, stating that the government was represented only by the rich. Marat's writings were so fierce that he was made a member of the National Assembly so as to calm him. The Constitution commenced with the Declaration of the Rights of Man. It stated that the right to life, to freedom of speech, to freedom of opinion, and to equality before the law were intrinsic to all human beings. But remember that the majority of the people of France at that period were uneducated and could not read or write. Visual symbols were used to share the message to them. The broken chains stood for freedom. The blue, white and red symbolized the national colors of France. The red Phrygian cap was a sign of freedom and was worn by slaves when they became free. The all-seeing eye stood for knowledge. The self-devouring snake indicated eternity. The bundle of rods or fasces indicated strength in unity. The winged woman stood for the law. The scepter was a symbol of royal power. The tablet, also known as the law tablet, signified equality. Using these political symbols, the important ideas were communicated to the masses. With the creation of the Constitution and the Declaration of Mankind, King Louis's powers reduced drastically. However, as you will see later on, he had plans of his own. The people of France were happy. The National Assembly had succeeded in making France into a constitutional monarchy. However, having been stripped of almost all his powers, King Louis was not happy. He decided to launch a campaign with the help of Austria. As Queen Mary Antoinette was from the Austrian royal family, Louis was sure that if they were to reach Austria, they would be safe. So Louis and his family disguised themselves as peasants and headed off to Austria. Unfortunately, the revolutionists came to know of the plan. The king and queen were caught near the border of France before they could enter Austria. They were brought back to Paris. The people of Paris were enraged and now lost all faith in their royal family. The National Assembly decided to wage war on Austria. Lots of volunteers came to fight from the neighboring regions. Patriotic songs, such as the Marseillaise, were sung. Marseillaise was composed by Roger de la Isle and is now the national anthem of France. It was about during this time that Maximilien Robespierre came into the forefront of the revolution. A lawyer by profession, he was a strong orator and was the head of the Jacobin Club. The Jacobins included members from the lesser prosperous middle class. They considered themselves different. Jacobins were also called sans-culottes, which meant those without knee breeches. They wore long striped trousers, similar to dock workers, and wore a red Phrygian cap that symbolized liberty. Meanwhile, the war was still going on with Austria. Prussia too entered the war as an ally to Austria. The expenses of the war raised the prices of food again. High prices and shortage of food angered the Parisians. On August 10, 1792, thousands of people stormed the palace of the Tuileries, where King Louis and his family were staying. All the king's guards were massacred, and the king just barely managed to escape. The National Assembly stripped King Louis of all his powers and imprisoned him and his family. On September 21st, 1792, a new assembly called the Convention was formed, and France was declared a republic. Now that King Louis was imprisoned and that France was in the hands of the people, one would have expected that things would only get better. It got worse. The year immediately following the formation of the French Republic is referred to as the Reign of Terror. Hundreds died during this period, and they were all killed using the dreaded guillotine, a machine that was used for beheading people. The National Committee, now called the Convention and headed by Robespierre, felt that the best way to start the new republic was to execute the king. So they put King Louis on trial and found him guilty. He was allowed to spend his last moments with his family. On January 21st, 1793, King Louis was beheaded, his charge being the conspiracy against public liberty and the general safety. Marie Antoinette was also guillotined on October 16th of the same year. The monarchy was no more. King Louis was executed on the 21st of January, 1793, at the Place de la Concorde, followed by the execution of the Queen. The year immediately following the formation of the French Republic is actually referred to as the Reign of Terror. Hundreds died during this period. Maximilien Robespierre, now head of the Committee of Public Safety, felt that there were lots of enemies of the revolution plotting against France. He suspended the Declaration of the Rights of Man and started executing people he suspected of counter-terrorist activities. Thousands of people were imprisoned and killed during this period. Even the clergy and members of his own party were not spared. With every passing day, more and more people were killed. At the peak of the Reign of Terror, over 25 people were being guillotined daily. Even Antoine Lavoisier, the man who is considered the father of modern chemistry and who is famous for discovering oxygen and hydrogen, was executed during this period. On the economic front, Robespierre's government enforced a maximum ceiling on wages and prices, and the peasants were forced to sell grains at a fixed price of the government. Meat and bread were rationed, and the use of white flour was banned. Only whole wheat bread, known as equality bread, was allowed. Furthermore, churches were shut down and the buildings converted into barracks. Equality was practiced even through speech, where instead of Madame and Monsieur, Citoyenne and Citoyen were used. Camille Desmoulins, a revolutionary journalist of that time, had conflicting views on Robespierre's government and voiced his thoughts openly. He was against guillotining people and believed that liberty could be achieved with more humane methods. Robespierre was the exact opposite. He believed that liberty could be achieved through terror. Desmoulins was eventually executed during the Reign of Terror. Finally, the supporters of Robespierre had enough. In July 1794, he was charged with treason and sentenced to death. Robespierre was guillotined facing the blade so that he could see death approaching him. And with the death of Robespierre ended the Reign of Terror.